more also in a way slapstick. It's got a lot, to me, I found it
What?
I found it as a comedy.
You found the reboot is a comedy? In the movie galaxy of the YouTube universe, you've landed on Frame Rate Studio, your guide for all things movies. I'm Chad.
And I'm Corey. If you haven't picked up on it yet, what we like to do is we like to review a movie that's kind of similar or in the same lines of a movie that just hit or soon is going to be hitting the theaters. This time around, what we are choosing to do is, with Megan, we are going to review the movie her brother made, called Child's Play.
It's almost like Megan is his, shall we say, kid sister? This is two very different stories. You know, the connecting tissue, if you will, is Chucky is in both of them. But as far as what direction they go in and how they start off, especially with the origin stories in both, are two very different origin stories for Chucky.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, I go back and forth when I'm looking at them, like, which one do I like better? I mean, I don't know which origin story I like better, because there's part of it that's more creepy for me from the original, knowing that it's a sort of like a possession of a doll from a human. But then you have, you know, kind of like a mini Terminator going on. So
yeah, and I think that for me, the origin story, I liked the reboot better because to me that felt more real world believable of something that could truly happen. The origin story in the original, with it being kind of this possession by a serial killer using voodoo, it felt like a very 80s horror type of origin story.
I would agree. I think I like the reboot better, but the reboot is more realistic in everything that this could happen in this way, but it's more also in a way slapstick. It's got a lot, to me, I found it
What?
I found it as a comedy.
You found the reboot is a comedy? Did we watch the same movie? This is the one with Aubrey Plaza in it. Did we watch the same movie? I don't. I guess I'll ask then. What did you find slapstick-esque about the reboot? Because, like I said, that was definitely not the way I took it.
I have down here 5 examples that had me just laughing.
Okay.
The first one is Shane. Him falling off the ladder. He falls, his legs bust, but he stands there for a moment going, and then he falls backwards, and the 2 girls turn and look, and he's not there.
I get what you're saying with that. Yes, that part of it, yes. I will say I did, as far as his look and then the 2 girls looking back and he's just not there. Yes, I get what you're saying. It sort of had that, and I've got some other points where I think it has feelings like that. It sort of is that Ghostbusters moment where it's Rick Moranis' character. He's running up to the restaurant. He's like yelling out, and it's like, and then he just goes down, and then the diners just slowly turn back and go back to their dinner.
Yes, that's a perfect example.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. Okay, I get what you're saying from that. Okay, I understood. Yeah, but I'm still interested in at least one more of your examples.
Oh, and then when he's training Chucky to scare Shane and all the different faces.
Well, okay, yes. Yeah.
Come on.
Yes.
It is just so comical to me.
It's not that I didn't find those parts funny. It's just what stuck with me more was the deaths that do happen in this. That they are pretty gruesome and everything, and they're very. The part that I really was like, oh, holy! It caught me off guard. I should say, is I'll call it when the Shano lantern shows up in Andy's room in the reboot, and that was just. Yeah, that was, yeah.
I read up on that.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Okay, so you know MGM owned this.
Oh,
and then Universal did all the sequels. Okay, so none of the kills in the sequels
Okay.
could appear. Anything that was remotely the same.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, he wanted Shane to be completely decapitated and put up there. Well,
Oh.
they're like, we can't do that because that's in one of the sequels. And so what he's like, well, what if his face gets taken off and we put the face around a watermelon? And they're like, you can do that.
We've talked a lot so far about the reboot, but what I liked about the original so much was they really did, and even though I know Chucky's the killer doll is going to turn into the killer, it's like they really did, in the way they constructed that story of that first one, had you guessing whether Andy really, is he the killer or not, until you get to that, kind of halfway point, and that's like, oh no, he's not. But it's like, because they have both him and Chucky essentially dressed in very similar clothing. They basically, they're the same size, so it's like all of it matches and it's tracking. And you're like, I thought that was pretty good for the original.
What I really loved about the original, and for really the most part, was the animatronics. Just the way it was done. He was cute and adorable. You could really find him loving and something you'd want. The interesting thing about the original Chucky is his voice, his doll voice, not the possessed voice, but the doll voice was the actual voice of a doll that came out at the same time as My Buddy. It was called Corky. And if you look at that doll of Corky, that looks a lot more in some ways like Chucky than My Buddy, because he's a redheaded kid.
Hi, pal. My name's Corky. Come on and be my best friend. Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end.
And then, as I said,
wow,
that's the voice that is recorded within the doll. But then as far as the rainbow suit and the other stuff, that's kind of My Buddy.
Sure.
What I liked the most was the voice work of the actor and the animatronics, how the mouth matched up with it so well. It was so smooth.
I thought maybe you were pulling my chain, but not now. Not now.
Compared to the reboot, which was very harsh.
This is for Tupac.
Back to the story, as far as the reboot is concerned, for me, I really liked is making Chucky such an indiscriminate killer. He has one motive, and it's really telling that essentially an obsessed lover story, that it's like, if I can't have you, no one will. And it doesn't matter if the character is good or bad, that he thinks has befriended Andy to be Andy's best friend instead of him. He goes after him because Doreen's the nicest character, but Chucky doesn't care, because it's either a 1 or a 0. So it's like, I'm supposed to be Andy's best friend.
I like the story a little bit better in the original one because it was more mysterious. Because the way it was shot and filmed, I love the whole beginning where it was ground view of that camera work. And I love that work of him running around, chasing things. And you, like you said, you do have a little bit of this. I mean, you could go into thinking it. I don't think I ever had the thought that it would have been Andy in it, but I see what you're saying. By the fact that they worked with that height, you can be going, is that the kid or is it the doll? And looking at it. Whereas with the first one, you didn't have that mystery because the kid was a teenager.
Well, you're talking about the
remake.
With the reboot, yeah. No, it was just that you don't, other than in the original, other than him actually doing the voice of the good guys, them doing the voice of the good guys doll, literally up until the halfway point of the movie, 42 minutes in, is when finally you get the scene where Karen realizes he doesn't have any batteries in. Falls under the chair or the couch, and Karen pulls him out, and all of a sudden his head turns around. So, oh no, it's the doll. Okay, Andy isn't the one who's crazy here. This is the doll.
Speaking of that,
yes,
right after he bites her.
Oh yeah.
And she goes to the cop and says,
Chucky bit me.
All I could think of was that very first viral
How did you get them?
Charlie bit me.
The first thing that came
Really,
to my mind.
it also plays up into that element. There are certain things that obviously have how not just movies in general, but horror movies have changed as far as like it doesn't seem far-fetched to them that, oh yeah, this is a doll that got possessed via a voodoo chant. Okay, sure, yeah. And he's a serial killer. Okay, cool. And like then it's like normally that would be something that just like might pull me out. I'm just like, it's an 80s horror movie. Like there was a lot of these and it was just like you just accepted that it's kind of a crazy premise and you go with it.
Very odd ways of horrors. It wasn't natural. They didn't go into that. So I do see the difference in there, and I think that's why you can enjoy both of these movies.
Oh yeah.
Depending on what you're going in expecting. If you go in expecting something that you can relate to truly in the real world, then you're going to want to go check out the remake. If you like the old 80s stuff and you like these whole, even zombie type stuff, then go check out the original one. I think the original one, they both carry very well for what they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is that yes, I'm not a big horror movie fan. I think we brought that up a couple episodes, and you know that very well. And I found both of them very engaging and fun in their own way to watch. I think the only challenge I had with the original was it was very creepy and was keeping me in it until you get to the end where they essentially, the many different deaths of Chucky.
Okay, hold on a second, real quick. We got to interrupt this show for to get your feedback. So we need to know what you think of what we're saying so far. Do you agree with us, or I don't know? Do we need to have our batteries removed?
To be fair, Chucky didn't write his batteries in. But anyway, if you do like this, give us the green light to help us make more episodes by liking, subscribing, and letting us know what you'd like us to review next.
Also, if you're already subscribed, make sure you hit that notification bell. I don't know what you're waiting on. Do it now. Hold on, I'll give you a second. 1, 2, there, I gave you 2. Hit that notification bell, and you'll be up to date every time we drop a new video.
Now, back to the review. So that's where I want to segue into acting. So first, we'll put a pin in Chris Sarandon's character first for a second. Because one, I want to say Alex Vincent as Andy in that first one does a phenomenal job. Does a great job.
Smokes. I want to go back and watch his other stuff to see where did he go off the rails that he didn't get picked up to do more things. Because yes, I totally agree.
And I read up on this beforehand when he has to do the scene where the crying scene, and he said I was dreading that. I was so dreading it. And he's like, so when we finally got to the day of, he's like, I just was bawling the whole day. He's like, it was kind of natural tears, but he's like, you got to give all the credit to my acting coach for getting that out of me. His job was impressive.
Phenomenal.
But then we go back to Chris Sarandon and, whoa. I mean, we are talking about some Daniel Chalice and Halloween 3 vibes here. I mean, just the way he's overacting in the car, the way he overacts when he gets cut by the knife, it's like most everybody else did a standard job, did a fair job, but his was just like, you're just, okay, come on, dude. Otherwise, well done as far as the acting in the original. The acting in the reboot is fine. I think everybody does a good job. I think the character I probably liked best was Fallon. And I liked it because, hey, note to Hollywood, if you're worried about representation, that's how you get it right. She was supposed to be a powerful character. It didn't matter who she was. So I liked her. I like Pug and Fallon.
Speaking of representation.
Okay, yes.
The best line in the whole movie, going back to the patch, to the scalping and everything, was the black cop coming down, pulling up the sheet and going,
White got dead in a watermelon patch. Poetic.
and puts it back down.
I had totally, I think I obviously didn't pay that close attention, but yes, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But the one challenge I had from the beginning, but at least they did lean into it, and you could tell they knew it was probably gonna be a problem for someone, was the casting. Definitely, it was like, I remember watching seeing the trailers when it came out. I'm like, she can't be his mom. That can't be, like, it looked more like brother sister than it did like older sister and brother.
And what does Pug say?
Later.
Your sister's pretty hot.
Dude, that's my mom.
Even hotter.
Exactly. And it was also that she makes the point where somebody's like,
You've got a kid.
Yes, I've got a kid. I had a very productive Sweet 16, okay?
it was like, so that they did at least lean in, they did at least mention it and didn't like, we're just not going to talk about it. And it's like, okay, well, that's when it becomes a bigger issue in all of this, is when you don't talk about that. Hey, they are pretty close in age. We do need to mention that, don't we? So.
And speaking of acting, though, before we go on, I mean, how can we do this entire episode without mentioning Mark Hamill's voice acting?
Yes.
I would say he was the strong role in this. He made that doll creepy.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that doll could have been as cute as the original Chucky. It could have actually been, as they brought in the the other dolls at the end. You have this new reboot, and you have the Teddy Ruxpin doll that shows up. But Mark Hamill, awesome voice work.
We've talked quite a bit already. Shall we go into our final thoughts?
Yes. Which one are we doing first?
I've got 2 scores, but I've got my final thoughts of kind of looking at both of these movies sort of in a comparison standpoint.
Okay, then I think you should go, because mine is actually viewing them independently.
Okay. Yeah, hey, cool.
Hold up, before we give that final thoughts and our score, I have one question for you. Play Pal Chucky versus Coslin Chucky.
If it's just one versus the other, I go with the Play Pal Chucky. But if we're talking about that the Coslin Chucky can use all of his cohorts that he can connect to, easily the Coslin Chucky.
Did not put that into my consideration, but yeah. Hey, how about you? What do you think? Who's going to win?
So, my final thoughts. Reboot over original. You know, I had a fun time with both, but overwhelmingly I preferred the reboot. You know, I felt it had a better origin story for Chucky and felt more realistic and creepier. Second point, gruesome and more shocking. For me, the deaths in the reboot are much more shocking and had me going, oh, wow, you know, a couple times. Especially, you know, I mentioned earlier, the Shano lantern. That kind of shocked me and gave me pause. And then believability. You know, I think you talked about it, you know, I felt the story of the reboot was much more believable. And for me to really go into a horror movie and really be scared, it has to have more of a real world feel. And I felt it did. But overall, both of these movies, I think, are worth a watch. So, Corey, your 2 sets of final thoughts, I guess?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say about the original one, I'm going to start with the original one. The original one is the special effects still stand up to today. They are phenomenal, wonderful. It actually makes me think that we need to go back to that style of it and forget about CGI so much. I know CGI may be cheaper now these days and you can push it out faster, but we need to step back and maybe go back to it at times, because this is just phenomenal work by them. The second thing I'm going to say is this is probably more of a psychological thriller than a horror, actually. I know we didn't really say that in the review, but I want to say that now for you. It is, because there's a lot of mental anguish that goes on in the mother and these other people trying to figure out what is happening. Is her son really messed up? Is he really having psychological issues himself? Or is this doll really alive? So there's a lot of that. Even though there is kills, you know, they're not that gruesome. They're not that scary. It just, boom, it happens. Lastly, I will say this is very enjoyable movie. Just don't look for the holes. There are a lot of holes in this. A lot of flaws, inconsistencies you find. But you got to remember when it was made. It was made in the 1980s. So go watch it with that in mind, and it's fun. It's a good movie. Now for the remake, now I tried to look at these separately, which I still did, but this first one is in a comparison. The special effects for the doll and everything is very weak. And I will say, even though the Chucky doll looks like a redheaded version of Elon Musk, even he wouldn't sell something that was that disgustingly looking.
Ooh. Wow. Ooh. Anyway, your next point, sir.
Second of all, it is a very entertaining movie if you can go in and not care about characters, because the characters are flat. My whole time thinking of it, I thought so many of them were going to die because they felt like cannon fodder. Just now, obviously by what Chad has said and from what I've said, this is different, but I say go in and view this as a horror comedy because it is just full of laughs. I think it was just a riot. If you go into it with that mindset and not truly trying to be scared, I think you can have a lot of fun with this movie. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and give my scores here first off. And I'm going to, once again, start with the original. The original one, now, as much as I've hyped up these things and talked them, I will admit my scores aren't that high. But I will admit what makes these movies all that much better is they're fun to talk about.
Exactly.
This conversation makes me almost want to bump my score up higher. But I'm going to leave it at what it is.
Do it.
So the original one, I give a 53. Just over 50%. Now, the second one, now the remake, I gave a 58. So they're both right there in the same range. But after discussing this and enjoying them like this, I could easily put them both over the 60 mark.
Well, I can see that. How close we are on the original is shocking me. I mean, I know we talked about in the one episode that we were pretty in sync, but this, we're very, very close. So for the original, I gave it a 54. So, only 1 point different than you. Now, obviously, I've went on and on about how much I did like the reboot or like different parts about the reboot. I gave that a 75. That probably for me was because of I felt the themes it was covering and everything I really dug. And like you were saying, this has been fun to talk about. And if we had infinite amount of time or you wanted to watch us forever, well, that's our review. So what do you think? What's your favorite Chucky? Are you excited for M3GAN? Let us know in the comments below.
As always, the cast of Frame Rate Studio thanks you for joining us on our trek through the movie galaxy of the YouTube universe.